The time is just gone 8:25 a.m. and the focus now is on media freedom, and we're talking about the protection of journalists. We've seen over and over again where journalists have come under threat. They've come under fire for one simple reason, for simply doing their job. And we've seen the case of Karen Morgan, and she obviously seeking now to have the private prosecution matter brought by former President Jacob Zuma struck off the roll. And journalists are up in arms, and this is the reason why we are talking this morning with the South African National Editors Forum's project manager. We are now joined by Hopewell Radebe. Hopewell, good morning to you, and welcome to the show.
Good morning, Sen. Thank you for inviting us.
Yes, once again, under the spotlight, under the radar, we see the protection of journalists come under under scrutiny as a result of what is taking place with Karen Morgan.
Yes, and we just think it is unfortunate that she has to face this. In fact, we don't wish it on any journalist that you get to be separated from your organization and you get to be sued alone, so to speak, or have you prosecuted as an individual when you actually work for an establishment.
Yes. Now, the key issue here is about media freedom, and this is important for us to understand in terms of looking at South Africa, looking at our constitutional democracy as well. And this is a right, media freedom, and the defense of journalists. And I see the picture that's come up on the screen where we've seen the protests with the SANEF logo. Don't kill the messenger, uphold the media freedom. This is extremely worrying when we have now a protest of this nature asking for what is termed as a basic right in the protection of the media and journalists in general.
Yes, our constitution does protect freedom of expression, and this is where the rights of the media and practitioners falls under. And yet we find that the former president believes that journalists should be prosecuted if they printed something that one does not like. And in this case, he really believes that being a former president, if he's sick, it should be none of the nation's business. The journalist should not find out what is wrong with him at all, and it should not be printed or published.
Yes, and also looking at South African media in general, we have a very robust media. We have robust journalists that go in, and there's a lot considering so much that is happening in this country. And to a large extent, the country is reliant on journalists to come out to speak the truth, and also at the same time to uncover and unpack all that is taking place around us, Hopo.
Yes, let's take this example of our former president. He goes to court, he says, I'm sick, I cannot come to court. And that document was put in the files of the court case. Hence, the journalist was able to pick it up and say, yes, if you want to know as a nation, what is it that the president is ailing from, and is able to tell that story. We did that with President Nelson Mandela, who was always upfront about his health, was always upfront about the truth, even with President Thabo Mbeki. But this one feels that it should be kept a secret, that he was sick about something. But yet it is a document that is for public consumption. So journalists in general are going out there, have to tell the truth. To recall a long-time case of one of the Sunday Times journalists when the minister, Simang, was a minister of health. She went to the hospital in Cape Town, and she ended up sending up journalists to go, not journalists, nurses to buy her alcohol. And the journalists got that story and were able to tell the nation. They got very angry and said, how dare you tell that the minister was sick, was in the hospital? I said, first of all, we had to verify the facts that indeed she was at the hospital. What if she says, I was not even at the hospital, I'm not even there? So we needed to get that verification and be sure that that is the truth. So those are the things that the public should understand. it is not just to publish for the sake of publishing. It's also to verify the truth and make sure that what is being said is indeed what is happening.
Yes, and also looking at all this talk in this country about gender-based violence, and looking at looking at women journalists, and they've come under attacks in more ways than one, to the extent that they are being harassed, they are being bullied, and that is also a cause for concern for SANEF, and also at the same time looking at all this bullying that is taking place, and we know women have been actually been body shamed. They've been called all sorts of names in the past, and I've just been looking at that protest action, at the visuals as well. There are a lot more women that are actually protesting against what is taking place as far as Karen Bond is concerned.
Yes, we were joined by the Right to Know campaign activists. We were joined by the Peter Maritzburg-based activist on sexual harassment, on rape, and so on. But they came forward to raise their concern about the targeting of women journalists. You'd recall two journalists have already been harassed when they were doing their job, particularly one in the Western Cape from the ENCA, when the EFF was protesting and trashing the shops. And the journalist who went there was harassed and pushed around. One of the journalists now from ENCA as well, a female, was pushed to the ground when she was covering the MMC for safety. Imagine that, the MMC for safety. But the MMC walked away when the journalist was being pushed, when she was trying to get an interview with him. So it's one of those things that we feel that women in particular get to be targeted and made scapegoats for what is happening. Even in this case of former President Jacob Zuma, we think that because this lady had been following this case for more than 10 years, reporting on him, and then now he decides to sort of harass her and threaten her, because it's a threat so that you stop reporting, you stop writing about this person. So you are being brought to jail, or you are being brought to court and threatened with long jail, what you call events.
Yes,
Term,
and
sorry.
just finally, Hopewell, how far is Senate prepared to take this apart from just the protest? Because this is not going to be the end in the case of Karen, but going into the future, because many of these journalists come up against what we would call heavyweights, and we know the former president, obviously high profile, and a lot more, considering where we are as a country and how we see issues being dealt with and what is being uncovered on a day-to-day basis in this country.
We are working with her on this journey. We have applied to be friends of the court, so we are incurring what you call a legal cost for it, so that we make a point and we make the what you call the court understand what this means to the what you call to the fraternity, because it was not just Karen. Remember that Sikonati Manchancha, who was writing about the ESCOM, one of the ESCOM executives. Threatened to sue him and also prosecute him in his private capacity, even though he was no longer even a journalist, because he went to join ESCOM as a spokesperson. And we stood up with him and we said, we will support you should this be happening. But of course, the Zondo Commission prevailed, and Matsela Koko was found to have acted improperly, and he's facing the music himself. So we now know that he has kind of suspended his action against Sikonati Manchancha. So it's not just about Karen, it's a principle. And we will stand up and protect and defend any journalist that faces such private prosecution, because we don't want it to be a trend in South Africa where journalists are silenced from doing their job by being threatened to being prosecuted for investigative work that they've done.
Well, hopefully we're going to have to leave it at that. We certainly will follow developments. But for now, we thank you. We do appreciate your time with us right here on Solar Media.
Thank you so much. We appreciate the opportunity.
Hopewell Radebe with us this morning, and he's the project manager at the South African National Editors Forum. We're going to go for a break. We'll be back.